Welcome to another deep dive. This time, you wanted to learn more about the Canadian flag. And let me tell you, there's a lot to unpack with that maple leaf.
Oh, absolutely. It seems so simple at first glance, but it's like a visual summary of a whole country's story.
Exactly. And to really get it, I think we got to go back in time a bit. What was going on in Canada, flag-wise, before the maple leafs came along?
Well, it was a bit of a hodgepodge, really, reflecting Canada's history. Early on, you had seen flags like the St. George's Cross and the Royal Banner of France, from those early European explorers.
Makes sense. So kind of like whoever got here first, their flag gets to fly situation.
Pretty much. But as things developed and British influence grew, the Union Jack became the dominant flag, even after Canada started gaining more independence. Then there's the Red Ensign, which a lot of people saw as a step towards a more Canadian symbol. It had the Canadian shield on it, and over time they kept adding provincial arms as Canada expanded.
So the Red Ensign was like a bridge between those colonial roots and a growing sense of Canadian identity.
Exactly, but it still wasn't quite there yet. And that's where the 1960s come in and the big Great Flag debate, a pretty big moment, politically charged, strong opinions flying around about what the flag should represent.
I bet. So what was the driving force behind wanting a new flag? Was it just about having something unique, or was there something more to it?
Well, it was definitely about creating a distinct image for Canada on the world stage. Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson was a key figure pushing for this. He had an experience during the Suez Crisis. I don't know if you heard of that.
Vaguely.
So Canadian peacekeepers were actually mistaken for British forces because of the Red Ensign and its, Union Jack.
So a case of mistaken identity with some pretty real consequences.
It was, and it made Pearson realize that Canada needed a flag that was undeniably its own, something you couldn't mix up with any other country.
So did he just come up with the maple leaf design we know today?
Not quite. His initial idea, what they called the Pearson pennant, it had 3 red maple leaves on a white background with blue borders. The 3 leaves were meant to represent Canada's motto, from sea to sea.
Okay, I'm picturing it, but I have a feeling it didn't exactly win everyone over.
Yeah. Let's just say it wasn't a universal hit. Some thought it was too busy, even a concession to Quebec, which wasn't really helpful in the already tense political climate.
So how did we go from 3 leaves to that single iconic maple leaf? It seems so simple now, but I bet the process wasn't that straightforward.
Oh, not at all. A whole parliamentary committee was formed in '64 to sort through literally thousands of designs. It was a massive, massive undertaking, reflecting how diverse Canada was and is.
That's where George Stanley comes in, right? The historian who really pushed for that single-leaf design.
Exactly. He got his inspiration from the flag of the Royal Military College of Canada, where he taught. It also had a single maple leaf on it. Stanley was a big believer in simplicity, a design that would last.
I love that. Sometimes the best ideas are the simplest. But was everyone immediately on board with his vision? It was the 60s. I imagine there was some pushback to such a bold change.
Oh, yeah, tons. Over 5,000 designs were considered. People suggested everything, beavers, fleur-de-lis, you name it. It really shows how many different ideas people had about what Canada was all about.
Wow, talk about competition. It's incredible that the single leaf emerged as the winner from that huge pool of ideas.
It really is. And the way it happened is pretty interesting. In the final vote, the Conservatives, they assumed the Liberals would support Pearson's 3-leaf design, so they decided to back the single leaf as kind of a strategic move.
A little political maneuvering behind the scenes.
Yeah. But here's the twist.
Yeah.
The Liberals were so impressed by Stanley's vision that they also voted for the single leaf. It ended up being a unanimous vote, 15-0.
Wow, a unanimous vote that really says something about how powerful that design was. Like everyone suddenly saw what it could be. But even with the vote, it wasn't officially the flag just yet, right?
Right. It was approved by Parliament, but they still needed the royal seal of approval, literally. A really beautiful proclamation was made, all fancy, for Queen Elizabeth II to sign.
So not just any old piece of paper. They really went all out to make it special.
Yeah, calligraphy, illustrations, the whole works. And it even had its own little international adventure. They had to fly the proclamation to the UK for the Queen's signature, and then to the Caribbean for the Attorney General's signature. He was on vacation.
Sounds like quite the trip for a document.
It was, and unfortunately, all that travel, plus the delicate materials, they started taking their toll. The proclamation started falling apart, paint flaking off, even some Scotch tape stains.
Oh, no. That's heartbreaking, given how important it is historically. Did they manage to save it?
Thankfully, yes. In '89, they carefully restored it, and now it's kept in a special controlled environment, safe and sound for future generations.
That's a relief. Okay, so the design was approved, the proclamation was signed, and then came the big day, the official inauguration. Set the scene for us. What was the atmosphere like?
Okay, picture this. February 15th, 1965, on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. A huge crowd gathered, everyone's excited. Right at noon, the red ensign is lowered and the brand new maple leaf flag is raised for the first time.
That must have been an incredibly powerful moment.
Oh, it was. People were singing "Oh Canada," then "God Save the Queen." There was this feeling of pride, of unity, like a brand new chapter was starting. The Governor General even called the flag a symbol of Canada's unity of purpose and high resolve, which is, well, quite powerful.
Wow, I can only imagine. It's amazing how much emotion and symbolism are packed into that simple design.
It really is. But it's important to remember not everyone was happy about it. Some people were really attached to the old flag. George Stanley even got threats for, quote-unquote, assassinating it.
Wow, people were really passionate about it.
They were. I guess it shows how deeply people can feel about symbols, especially during times of change.
Definitely. But despite those challenges, the maple leaf flag, well, it persevered. And now it's a symbol of Canada.
Right.
It represents unity, diversity, Canada's unique place in the world. We've covered so much already, from those early flags to the Great Flag Debate and the birth of the iconic maple leaf. Before we dive into the deeper symbolism, maybe take a moment to let everything sink in.
Sounds good to me. We've got a lot more to explore, some really fascinating stuff, trust me.
So we've traced the flag's journey from those early colonial days to the maple leaves we all know today. But I want to talk about the maple leaf itself. What makes it such a powerful symbol for Canadians?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it goes to the heart of why this flag works so well. The thing is, the maple leaf has been a Canadian emblem for ages, long before the flag even existed.
I get that.
Yeah.
Growing up, they were everywhere. Coins, stamps, even clothes. It's practically woven into, the Canadian DNA.
Right. It popped up on coats of arms way back in the 18th century, and on the arms of Ontario and Quebec in 1868, even on coins, Canadian coins as early as 1876. So by the time the flag debate rolled around, the maple leaf was already like this visual shorthand for Canada.
It's like it was meant to be on the flag, wasn't it? Just waiting for its moment.
You could say that, and it goes beyond just visuals, Think about the song "The Maple Leaf Forever." It basically became an unofficial anthem.
Oh, yeah. School assemblies. Anyone. Speaking of school, I've always wondered about the design of the leaf itself. Why 11 points? Any, secret symbolism there?
You'd think so, right? But it all comes down to wind tunnel tests.
Oh, wait, what? Wind tunnels?
Seriously. They tested all sorts of maple leaf designs in, high wind conditions. And guess what? The 11-point leaf was the least blurry when it was flapping in the wind.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So practical. They were really thinking about how it would actually look in action.
Exactly. They wanted it to be recognizable no matter what, even from far away. It wasn't just about how pretty it looked. It was about making sure the flag's message was clear, always.
So no secret code in the number of points. Just smart design. But speaking of details, I know a few other things caused a stir during the flag's creation, right? Like the shade of red.
Oh, yeah, picking the right red. You wouldn't believe how much debate that sparked. People were serious about which red represented Canada best. And, of course, which one would look good on different materials.
There are so many shades of red. I can only imagine the arguments.
They even went as far as specifying the exact color shades for, printing ink in the official docs. Now, that's attention to detail.
Wow. They really didn't leave anything to chance, did they? I'm loving these behind-the-scenes details. What else have you got?
Okay, remember that fancy proclamation we talked about? The one that traveled all over for signatures? Well, there's a fun little secret on that document.
Less secret. I'm all ears.
The calligrapher, Yvonne Deisman, she snuck her own tiny signature into the artwork.
No way. So it's just tucked away there on this super important historical document. That's incredible.
Yeah, nobody even noticed until way later, when they were restoring it. I think it's a nice reminder that even in the most official stuff, there's always a human touch, a personal story hidden in there somewhere.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered the design, the approval, the hidden secrets. But what about how you're actually supposed to use the flag? Is there a Canadian flag etiquette?
Absolutely. There are guidelines published by Canadian Heritage. They're called, you guessed it, the National Flag of Canada Etiquette. It covers everything, how to fly it with other flags, how to display it respectfully, all that.
So there's right way and wrong way to handle the flag.
Definitely. For example, the Canadian flag always comes first, more important than most other flags, except in very specific cases, like the King's Standard, for example, or the Governor General's Standard. It's about showing respect for the flag and what it stands for.
Makes sense. It reminds me of seeing the flag at half-mast. Is there, like, a special protocol for that, too?
Yeah, flying it at half-mast, that means Canada's in mourning. It's a way of showing national sorrow, a way to remember, to grieve together.
It's interesting how much the flag can communicate without saying anything. It's
Yeah.
not just a piece of fabric. It's a way for everyone to express something together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even the way you fold the flag, especially for things like funerals, that's part of the etiquette too. You handle it with care, with respect.
Wow, I never thought about all the thought and tradition behind even the simple things you do with the flag. It's making me look at it in a whole new way.
That's what I love about exploring these everyday symbols. We kind of take them for granted, but there's so much going on beneath the surface.
Okay, so we've been talking about the official flag,
Hmm.
but I'm curious about other flags you still see in Canada. The Royal Union flag, the red ensign. Where do they fit in now?
Right, that's important. Even though we have the maple leaf flag as the official one, those older flags haven't vanished completely.
So where might you see them flying these days?
Well, the Royal Union flag, it represents Canada's part in the Commonwealth and loyalty to the Crown. So it's still flown sometimes, like on Commonwealth Day or Victoria Day. You might see it at federal places, often alongside the Canadian flag.
It's interesting how they kind of coexist, each flag representing a different part of Canada's history.
Exactly. And then there's the red ensign. Some veterans groups and other organizations, they still fly it as a symbol of Canada's British heritage.
So it's less about official rules and more about personal or group identity.
Yeah, that's it. It's a way for some Canadians to connect with that part of their history.
This reminds me of Quebec, where I've heard the provincial flag is, like, extra important.
Mhm.
What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the relationship between the Canadian flag and provincial flags, it's especially interesting in Quebec. For a lot of people there, their provincial flag, the fleur-de-lis, that's a really strong symbol of their own culture.
So it's not just about being proud of Quebec, it's about a different idea of what it means to be Canadian.
Right. It's all tied up in Quebec's unique history. And you'll notice you don't see the Canadian flag as much there compared to other provinces. A lot of people, institutions, they fly the fleur-de-lis instead.
So they're making a statement, prioritizing the Quebec flag.
Definitely. The Quebec government even made it official. The fleur-de-lis has to come before the Canadian flag inside the province.
Wow, that's quite a statement. It shows how complicated things can be, right? Identity, belonging, all within a bigger country.
Exactly. And it shows that the conversation about what it means to be Canadian, well, it's still going on. Different parts of the country, different communities, they express it in their own way.
It's crazy how something as simple as a flag can be at the center of such big questions.
It shows you symbols are never neutral. They carry meaning, history, and they can bring up strong feelings, start important conversations.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious about how the Canadian government, promotes the flag, encourages people to connect with it.
That's a good point. The government does play a role in shaping national identity through flag-related things.
Like, there's a program where you can get a flag that actually flew on Parliament Hill.
Yeah, you got it. The Parliamentary Flag Program. You can ask for a flag flown from the Peace Tower or other spots on Parliament Hill.
That's so cool. Owning a piece of history like that.
It's a pretty unique opportunity.
Man.
And it's free, but there's a catch. The waiting list is over 100 years.
100 years. That's commitment. It shows how much people value that connection to the flag and what it represents.
Definitely. And then there's National Flag of Canada Day, celebrated every February 15th. Since '96, it's been a day all about recognizing the flag and its importance.
So it's a reminder for people to stop and think about what the flag means.
Exactly. It's a chance to celebrate the flag and what it stands for the country and for individuals.
This has been such a great deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about the flag, but about Canada itself.
It's always fun to uncover the hidden stories in something we see every day.
I definitely won't look at the Canadian flag the same way again.
Mission accomplished. It's a good reminder that even the most familiar symbols have stories to tell, and they're often a lot more complicated and interesting than we realize.
It's really amazing how much we've learned about something that most Canadians see all the time, but probably don't think that much about.
It is, isn't it?
Like, we've gone beyond just that surface level and found all this history and meaning, even controversy, hidden within the flag's story.
And you know what's even more fascinating? The Canadian flag story isn't over. It's still evolving, changing, right alongside Canada itself.
That's so true. Thinking back to everything we've talked about, it's obvious that this flag is way more than just a symbol. It's like a reflection of Canada, where we came from, what we stand for, and even those tough conversations we're still having about who we are as a country.
Exactly. You can see that journey from those colonial beginnings to a more, independent and diverse nation right there in the flag's design. And the fact that people have different interpretations and relationships with the flag, especially in places like Quebec, it just adds another layer to the whole thing.
It really highlights that Canadian identity isn't just one thing, right? There are all these regional differences, cultural nuances, and, let's be honest, historical baggage that all play a part in how people connect with the flag.
Absolutely. It's almost like the flag is a mirror reflecting all those different perspectives back at us. For some, it might symbolize unity, while for others, it might be a reminder of past wrongs and everything in between. It shows you how these national symbols, they can be deeply personal. They can evoke a whole spectrum of emotions.
This whole deep dive has definitely made me think differently about symbols in general, not just flags, but any symbol, how we use them, how their meanings change over time, and how they can represent so much more than what you just see on the surface.
That's what's so great about digging deeper, isn't it? Looking beyond the everyday and realizing how much history, meaning, and even controversy is baked into these things we often just take for granted.
So as we wrap up our exploration of the Canadian flag, what's the one thing you'd like our listeners to really think about?
Well, I think it all boils down to this. What does the Canadian flag represent to you personally? How has its meaning changed for you over the years? What role does it play in how you see yourself as Canadian? That's a question worth pondering, especially as we as a nation keep trying to figure out things like diversity, inclusion, and reconciliation.
I love that. It's an invitation to really think about the deeper meaning of this flag, to go beyond just the image. It's not just about history or politics. It's about personal reflection, understanding your own connection to that maple leaf and everything it stands for.
Exactly. And that connection, it can be complex. It might change over time. It might even feel contradictory sometimes. And that's okay. The important thing is to think about it, to be open to the different ways people see it.
Thanks again for leading us through this fascinating deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about the flag, but about Canada and, well, who we are.
It's been my pleasure. And to everyone listening, happy reflecting.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to check back for our next exploration of, well, who knows what. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep learning.